Well, hello there. My name's Doug Meadows, and I'm the founder and the visionary and the hero maker here at David Douglas Diamonds. And I just wanted to welcome you to week 25 of our journey through a century of luxury and legacy. And today is actually Father's Day, and so I just thought it would be a good topic to talk about the fathers in my life, the fathers that helped found this company, and that kept it going, and stuff. And so I just, I think of my grandfather, both of my grandfathers, but especially my grandfather that started us in this industry. I don't know, I just wish I knew more about him. As you get older, you come up with a gazillion questions. When I was younger, it was like he's just an old guy, and I didn't care to even be too close to him. He was fun. He had by the time I have memories of him, he was living in Florida, down in Hollywood, Florida, and he had a swimming pool, and so, I mean, what better place for a kid to go than to his house and go swimming? We would go down there, I feel like maybe once a year, once every couple years, we would make the drive from Michigan all the way down. And, I mean, it's hard for anybody to really understand or relate to what that drive was like back then. Let me think, that would have been in the 60s that we would have been driving down there. I-75 was not complete, so there was a lot of detours along the way, and it was not a quick trip. I mean, today, to get from where I lived up in Michigan to get down to Hollywood, Florida, it was a good 24 hours trip. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, I had bought my first car. I got a Mustang convertible in 1965, and me and a couple of my buddies decided to go on down to Hollywood to go visit my aunt and uncle, and we drove it nonstop. I mean, we just took shifts and kept on going, but it took us a good 24 hours to do it. So going down there was always fun. As I got a little bit older, I don't know, I got a little bit more distant from my grandfather for some reason. But he always had he had a dachshund named Heidi, and he actually had a high chair at the table for her. And he would put her in the high chair. I don't know, it was a fun little thing. I just enjoyed his dog. After he got divorced from my grandmother, he got remarried, and that particular woman, I'll never forget, they would come up to Michigan and to visit us and stuff. And I finally got to that point where I was ready to call her grandma. And then sadly, just before I had that opportunity to do that, she ended up passing away. And then my grandfather remarried again. I didn't really connect with her at all. But I don't know, my grandpa was always known for his lamb. He would always cook a lamb roast or some type of a lamb, and he had a mint jelly sauce that it would go with it, which I'm sure came from living in England. Now that I've been to England, I can relate to why they had lamb so much, and why that was a big deal to cook that and have that, and because lamb was everywhere, just like we have cows everywhere. But it was a fun time growing up with him, and moving on to like my dad and my uncle, my dad, I don't know, I definitely enjoyed my dad. I don't feel like we ever had a big issue or problem with each other. But, as a father, there was, I don't know, I'm thinking back, and you always can sense the different lacks, but you don't recognize all the different fulfillments that my dad gave us. It was always fun to go camping with my dad. Not that we did it very much, but my dad and uncle had bought some lake property. And they had a strip of 40 acres actually in between two lakes, and the property had lakefront property on both lakes. And it felt like an eternity to get there. As I look back now, it was probably only tops an hour and a half drive, maybe an hour drive from home. But I remember us packing up the tent, going out there and going camping a couple of times. We'd go swimming in the lake, and things that make a memory for you is usually a tragedy or a disaster. And I think one of the camping disasters we had is we accidentally set the tent up on a bee's nest, which wasn't a problem until we took the tent down. And man, they were mad. And so we had a little bit of a mess there. And then swimming in the lake, you'd get, I don't know what they were, slugs or something that would get attached to you. So that was kind of scary and gross. But then going a little bit further, my dad, he was always intrigued with stuff, and we had a Popular Mechanics subscription, and in there was a dome tent made out of cardboard, and so he was on this quest to build this dome tent. He was obsessed with round homes, dome buildings, things like that. I remember him talking about that. One of the things he had said one time is he said his grandfather or his dad told him once that he wouldn't go into a church unless it was round. And so I think that left an impression on my dad to continually look at round structures. But he built this dome tent out of cardboard by creating triangles and then putting wood strips on it, and we would screw all these wood strips together. And we got some paint on it, but it needed quite a few coats of paint, and we ran out of time. We went up north, and my dad, we put it all together. Me and my brother, we slept in a little pup tent. And I think the very first night we had a torrential downpour. And it turned into one of the soggiest graham crackers you could have ever imagined. Me and my brother, we were in the tent, we were okay, but we actually had a river running underneath the tent. It's just all these fun things are around either a problem or a tragedy, or you can always look back and laugh at it all, but in the midst of it all, it was kind of rough. But the other thing that was memorable with my dad is I can remember one time I got in an accident. I was taking their relatively new car home. It was a used car, but it was new to them. It was a nice little Cougar, and I was taking it home, and I thought, I had left work, and I was heading home, and I thought I'd go ahead and fill up the car for my dad. And I don't know. I mean, I think I probably was way distracted with the music in the car and different things, and I was a young driver, and I pulled in front of a yellow Cadillac. How could you not see a big yellow Cadillac? Well, I pulled slap in front of it and totaled my dad's car. And, back then I didn't have cell phones. I had to go to a pay booth, try to call my dad, let him know what happened. And what shocked me the most was his first question is, "Are you okay?" And you know, I must admit, my kids have gotten in some accidents, and that's not always been my first thought and mind, sadly. But he, you know, he wasn't worried about the car at the moment. He was just worried about me, and that, you know, said a lot. But you know, you know, my uncle was kind of rough to be around for me as a kid. He had quite the mouth on him, and that it always bothered me, you know, of him swearing all the time and different things. And so I think one day when we were in the shop, that kind of came to head with me, and I kind of blew up at him about it. And he was good for a while, but he kind of watched his mouth and stuff. But you know, I always looked at my cousins. You know, they had two. My uncle had two kids, Bob and Jim, and I always looked at them, and you know, they got to go to summer camp and different things. My aunt, she was a school teacher. You know, my uncle's working in the store or in the company, and so they always had a little bit more disposable income than our family. I mean, switching over to our family, you know, my mom was pretty much a stay-home mom, although she did do some part-time work here and there. And then, you know, and we had 4 kids, you know, for them to feed and take care of. And so there wasn't a lot of extra money going around to do fun things, where my aunt and uncle, you know, decided, you know, that their kids did a lot of fun things. Now, I benefited from some of those fun things with my aunt, especially in the summertime, because my aunt was a teacher, so she's off for the summer, and the kids were off. And my aunt would always grab me because I was real close to their age. I was Bob's age, and you know, Jimmy was a year younger or so. And she would take us on summer adventures. I mean, we would take a train ride to the Capitol in Lansing. She was a pilot, and so we would go flying different places. I mean, one year we flew out to Battle Creek, Michigan to go visit Kellogg's, and got the tour of the Kellogg plant and different things. So you know, I benefited from some of those fun adventures, which was great. But you know, then becoming a father myself was, you know, a challenge to begin with, because me and my wife, we're struggling to have a child, and it took until our 12th wedding anniversary until we actually ended up adopting our first son. And then 4 months later, the Lord opened up my wife's womb, and now we have 5 kids, 1 girl in the batch. But then, you know, trying to, I guess, every father either totally is just like their father, because that was the model that they had, or sometimes they just become totally the opposite, or I think there's always a blending of the two, you know, to where there's definitely things our fathers teach us in fathering that help us along the way. But then there's those things that you just go like, you know, I'm not going to do that to my kid, kind of a thing. But I remember when we adopted Drew, and he was really young. We were at somebody's house. I'd been trying to think of where I was at. I feel like it was a visiting pastor, or we were visiting a pastor somewhere, and it was the pastor's wife. And she said that, you know, she always prayed that, you know, God, you know, as a father, it's hard to be everything to your child. And that God would put another godly man in their life that would fill that void, whatever that void might be. And that really got me thinking about when I was growing up. I had a neighbor, his name was George Frazier. And you know, it was a small season in both me and my brother Dave's life. But when George moved in next door, and they had, I don't know, 5 or 10 acres, and they had horses and different things, and so me and my brother, we were affordable or cheap or free labor for him, and for us it was just a playground. I mean, we would go over there and bug him, and he'd have us doing all kinds of things, and we just really enjoyed it because, you know, my dad, he was home, but he wasn't there. I don't know what it was about that. I don't know where he was. I can't really put my finger on that. I don't know if he was just, I don't really remember him just sitting in front of a TV, but when he was home, he wasn't home. And, you know, I got to know my dad a lot more and a lot better just by working with him side by side or on different adventures and stuff. But my neighbor George, I mean, he taught me and my brother a lot. And, you know, I would always go over there and just hang with him. And I don't know how he could get things done without me. You know, I mean, he'd be trying to work on his car or his truck, and he'd always ask me to hand him a wrench or do whatever. And, you know, as a little kid, you're like thinking, wow, you know, if I wasn't here, he wouldn't be able to do this. Obviously, I probably was slowing him down more than helping him, but, you know, it is what it is. But he taught us how to work hard, how to take care of animals, how to be responsible. I mean, just so many work ethics came from hanging with George. What's ironic, though, is, you know, fast forwarding, George, he was married to Linda, and they had a little baby. And I think George was either George Jr. or George II. I think he was a George II, and so this became George III. You know, after we finally got to catch up with him, years fast forwarding, he was probably in his late 20s, early 30s, and he did not have a good memory of his father. It was actually relatively sour, but you know, so it's like, how can a man be important to some, as a father figure to some kids, but then to his own kid be totally different? And but I just always remembered that pastor's wife telling me to keep praying that God would put godly men in my kids' lives to fill the voids that I couldn't do for them. You know, because me and my wife started so late in life of getting a child, you know, we would hang with other couples that were having kids. And so there was a gentleman in our church, Perry Gann. They had 3 kids. And, you know, when we first moved down here to Atlanta, they kind of took us in underneath their wing because we didn't have any family, we didn't have any friends. And so we became really close with them. And Perry was a model of an amazing husband, amazing father to me, and an example to me of how to be a father, along with all the other men in my life. But Perry just really set that standard for me and really helped me see how to be unconditionally loving for your family and as a father, but also being a father that didn't just allow things to just happen. He was intentional, and he was disciplinary when he needed to be, and loving when he needed to be, and so that really helped me out a lot. And then, but now, you know, Joseph, being the 4th generation of this company, he has become a father, and so that's been really cool to watch him be a father. And, you know, Hayes is almost 2 years old. He'll be 2 years in August, and so far I'm just very proud of him being a father and how he takes care of Hayes and different things. And it's just real special to kind of see all these different generations growing up and being affected by our fathers. Here I'm being affected by my grandfather and the legacy that he started in this industry, and that thankfully my dad and uncle continued it, that I continue. I mean, trust me, it's fragile to get to a fourth generation. It's a miracle that we're even here. I have so many jeweler friends that their kids want nothing to do with their business and different things. So I'm very grateful that Joseph has continued or decided to continue on the legacy of David Douglas Diamonds and the jewelry, more just as in the jewelry industry and being a jeweler and taking over the company. But I don't know. I could talk for hours about all this stuff, but I think that's enough of my antics and my crazy stories. So I think I'm going to call it quits for today. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And one last thing. Today is the longest day of the year. It's one of my favorite days. After this, the days start getting shorter and I get more and more depressed. No, just kidding. I just wish our government would pick one or the other and stick with it. So I have two silly fun days of the year. One is the longest day of the year, which is the beginning of summer. And then the other is the shortest day of the year, which is in December, because I know that the next day the days are getting longer. So it's an excitement of anticipation of the days getting longer. And then, tomorrow being kind of slightly depressing because I know the days are getting shorter. But hey, I don't know, I didn't check this out, but I love the fact that Father's Day landed on the longest day of the year, because it just really thrilled me that I had the longest day to enjoy my day. But you all have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.